Hello, everybody. So I made something of an interesting decision last night, or a bad decision possibly, since this was kind of like the last article before bedtime decision at about 2 o'clock in the morning this morning, really. And I read this article by Nikita on rockandart.co.uk, which is a music publication I used to write for, and hopefully still might contribute to in the future, hopefully. And it's entitled BDSM and Abuse, Where's the Line and Who Controls It? And in that article, she discusses um, feminist attitudes, or the attitudes of certain feminists towards BDSM relationships, and in this classic, I'm sorry to say, like feminazi fashion, or in this classic radical feminist perspective, you find certain feminists coming out of the woodwork to sort of, look down or sneer upon BDSM relationships as exploitative. Whereas in BDSM relationships, and with anyone who knows anything really about BDSM, you also know that consent is right at the foundation of everything that goes on in that subculture. Because, the culture of safe words emerged from BDSM and what have you. And it's, like trust and consent are the two sort of major pillars of it. But the focus of these sort of, I think, pseudo-feminist critics, really, these radical feminists, what they really have a problem with BDSM relationships is dominant males and the potential for abuse there with submissive women. They completely disregard, consistently, I think, the possibility of abuse between a dominant woman and a submissive woman, for instance, in a same-sex sort of arrangement, or a dominant man and a submissive man in a same-sex relationship between men, or even a dominant woman and a submissive man. It's like, that could be abusive, sure, could it not? In fact, that's abusive in, well, not necessarily a BDSM setting, but in more of like a vanilla setting very often in real life. And we get sort of all these stories that sort of go under the radar of horrible domestic abuse meted out upon relatively sort of weaker and less assertive males by their very dominant and megalomaniacal female partners. And this really cuts, I think, to the heart of what is important about third-wave feminist ideology, and it is this notion of gender equality. And it's this notion that in social terms, that we must start treating one another as equals and reject female exceptionalism and reject male exceptionalism, and learn to see beyond the traditional constructs associated with sex and gender in society, and learn to see one another more at parity with one another in social terms, and less obfuscation in terms of stereotypes and the traditional connotations associated with genders. Women are the gentle sex, for instance. Is that quite the truth? Or can they be, mean and violent, even manipulative, cunning, devious, nasty, frankly, in terms of the verbal abuse they're capable of meting out upon men and one another, frankly. And and also growing up being into bondage, and with certain boyfriends of my mother, let's say, or a certain boyfriend of my mother, probably finding bondage sites in my search history, or it's somehow getting around that I was into bondage. I actually went through quite a bit of abuse over that in the domestic setting for being into bondage and for having fetish interests. I was called a thing, a freak of nature, homo-tolerant as a young teenager, and actually I think it was like even below a teenager, like 11 or 12, and that's when that began, and that persisted throughout my adolescence at home. And I grew up in, sort of divide the two households, after a sort of relatively uncomfortable divorce between my mum and dad, and sort of two quite hostile, nasty home environments, for me anyway. And obviously vanilla people. I always wondered, are you going to criticize people into kink and bondage? It's like, well, what are you into then? And are you doing it to sort of distract everyone away from the stuff you like? What are you into? Whatever, creepy shit's going on beneath the surface with you, you know? And that's on a level that, like, maybe it's for, purposes of deflecting attention away from them. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I think it couldn't be anything else, or it couldn't be otherwise. Well, you're into bondage. Like, firstly, like, I have this, like, dickhead on this young liberal society on Facebook the other day saying, have you sought help for your weird fetishes yet? Firstly, I'm into bondage, okay? My fetishes, and I've got a boot fetish as well, retifis, which is actually the most common fetish. But, like, bondage is as fetishes go, is pretty mainstream. It's not all that weird. But I mean, and you do get, like, weird fetishes, obviously, like, furries. I don't know, like, quite wide. I don't mind furries. So, like, people into, like, animal costumes, like, that's how they get their kicks. I don't know, there's all sorts of things, like food play I'm not into, and, like, costumes, not really so much into that, unless it's, like, a nice traditional, like, leather dominatrix outfit, and I'm getting spanked by a riding crop. Yeah, like, I got this the other day, new steel collar, but it's slightly too big. I might return it, actually, and get a smaller one. Whatever. Yeah, or, like, on a level, it's also kind of, is persecuting anyone for any kind of difference, because, kink and, like, bondage, for instance, fetishes, they're not protected under human rights legislation. A fetish is not a protected characteristic. Sexual orientation is, so you can't go around discriminating against people for being gay or lesbians, for instance. But yet, fetishes exist in a kind of legal grey area, and it's almost like, oh, we're just so hateful of difference within society and people being different and not being normal, right? So I found, like, a loophole for discrimination, or attack these people because they're actually not protected under law, strictly speaking. Like, but then again, obviously you're still attacking someone, and you've forgotten sort of large swathes of the law that deal with things like domestic abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, harassment, etc. So, like, firstly, like, well, you are committing crime anyway, in spite of whether or not someone has a fetish. Like, granted, fetishes aren't a protected characteristic, but under the spirit of the law, and under the spirit of the desire to treat people with equality and equanimity within society, so long as they're not doing anything wrong, as long as they're not abusers themselves, they're perfectly justified. But then again, a certain sort of radical feminist, I would quite like to assert, is like, bondage is wrong. It's abusive. And you know what it really strikes me as being? It strikes me as being equivalent, the 21st century equivalent of prudish, Calvinistic finger waggling, like, and like these, like, radical feminists, like, they're the modern day equivalents of, like, the 19th century prim school mum, or the nun who go around, like, whacking someone on the knuckles with a ruler for, I don't know, like, telling a dirty joke in class or something, or like, or, don't masturbate. No, it's like, but now we know that men ought to masturbate at least 21 times a month to avoid prostate cancer, or have 21 orgasms per month at least. So, no sex ever, no sex before marriage. Like, we can. If you know what you're doing, I think you've been able to avoid pregnancy, really, for most of history. By contraception of one form or another, or timing it correctly. But then again, we didn't really know that back in the past so much, how to time it correctly. But we have condoms now, and if you want to take added precautions, like, firstly, like, I went to bondage. So, who said anything about penetrative sex? I'd be, like, in that on a chain? No. and you'd be in control of me. So like it'd be up to you what happened. And up to me, well, I'd like a switch relationship. I think I sort of do the decent thing, like let her have her way with me first before like she trusts me enough to allow me to do it to her, if you see what I mean. Like, I'll be like, yeah, like do a deferential and acquiescent thing of just like, you know, like, well, I think it's only right fair that you have your way with me first, so you get to trust me. And you know, if she does anything that I dislike, I get to vote safe word and just sort of hope that she'd honour that and not take advantage. I suppose what we can really hope for, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, building up to the point at which, well, frankly, vanilla sex or bondage sex at all can happen. You'll be able to get. I expect you to get to know the person reasonably well, pretty well, before that can happen. So yeah, and yeah, it's a minefield to sort of navigate, but well, not really a minefield as such. It can be, but yeah, it's got to be up between consenting adults to sort of decide to go forward with the program of having whatever sort of sex it is that mutually interests them, or if I can sort of persuade someone to consent to it or give it a go, you know, see if it'll tickle their fancy, or if it's something that may or may not interest them. Be quite nice, and it's a real struggle for a BDSM partner. I can't get back onto FetLife now because stupid Vodafone has got like a parental block on it. Like, I can't get my Vodafone number and so on from email. Can't log into my Vodafone account and change the settings. Horrible. Stupid. But yeah, I mean, and this sort of this weird normal dichotomy. This lies at the very heart of fascism. You know, this is the essence of fascism, basically. You know, you've got the normal people, and also nice normal people on one hand, and then we've got weirdos and freaks and crazies and beatniks and whatnot, and Jews and gays and gypsies and and all these sorts of people who, you know, at a certain point in history, and to an unfortunate extent, you know, more than we probably like, you know, still today, being the sort of the fringe group in society, the sort of the out group and the in group. You know, the white Christian majority, and the out groups of Jews, gays, gypsies, communists, atheists, whatever. Do you see? You know, and yeah, and there's they're the weirdos, and we're the nice normal people. We're good. You know, and they're good to be normal. But then again, what if everyone were normal? I guarantee you it would be something else. It would be a different set of characteristics. It wouldn't be gayness, Jewishness, gypsiness, or anything else. It would be hair colour or eye colour. You know, and you get this, like, the germ of this beginning in sort of Nazi thought, don't you? Sort of with this idea that, like, the Nordics, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, like, that is the real ideal. Even though Hitler wasn't even blonde-haired and blue-eyed. And if they manage to successfully kill all the gays, Jews, gypsies, communists, etc., yeah, they would have eventually started ethnic cleansing related to people's hair colour. And think of how ridiculous that would have been. Or forcibly sterilising people who aren't blonde with blue eyes. And I shudder to think like what the end result of that process would have been. I think it would have been like something absolutely grotesque. You'd get a gene pool that's just far too small. You know, the blonde breeding with the blondes, and I don't see anything particularly great happening as a result of that sort of effort to fascistic. It'd be disgustingly ugly, I think, the results of it, in terms of you know, the impact on our genome, I think, you know, and the fact, well, yeah, this quality we have within a human gene pool of a great variety of different traits, and is also the problem that underlies eugenics, and is the problem that any sincere advocate of eugenics really has to negotiate. This is elucidated in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. You know, you've got this issue of the economy of traits, do you not? And you've got gammas, deltas, and epsilons right at the lower levels of genetics, or lower levels of intelligence within the gene pool, and they're bred for specifically to be manual labourers and workers and whatnot. And you've got alphas, betas, and deltas, who serve everything like from top administrative positions and political positions and scientific research positions in case of alphas, then down to deltas, got sort of more like menial, mid-level admin people there. And yeah, they got a kind of a cruder way, frankly, and rather a terrifying way of ordering society on the basis of selectively or selected traits, or traits that have been selected for and bred for, you know. And you know, Richard Dawkins is this big advocate of eugenics. You know, it's rather foul, actually, I think. On a level, maybe there's like something to be said for it in the case of genetic diseases, but you know, he was full on advocating, I think, at one point, breeding for intelligence. Like, what do you think is going to happen if you do that? It will stop valuing intelligence. This is pointed out in Brave New World. You should read it if you know, anyone should read it. But Richard Dawkins especially should read it if he hasn't already. Or read it and try and understand it a bit better. But yes, yeah, weird, normal. You know, the weirds, that includes people like the Beatles, frankly. Those were like hippie people, beatniks, sort of. Those bring in a hell of a lot of revenue into the economy and produce things of incredible worth and lasting value very often. So yeah, I wouldn't go around sort of vicariously slagging them off because of perceived difference. And very often, you know, like normal people in society, like squares, so often don't produce anything of remotely comparable value. You know, like they do just sort of sit in a cubicle all day and sort of, you know, and do admin and sell insurance and whatnot, and put on a suit and tie and drive off to the office and pay a bit of tax and whatnot. But you know, don't necessarily produce masterpieces that are works of incomparable and durable value. Yeah, and form part of a nation's economic and cultural heritage. So there's a sort of a mild philistinism underlying it also, since people who are successful in the arts, and well, actually for that matter, the sciences very often also, are not typical human beings. Every sort of Nobel laureate identifies the fact that they're typically very high intelligence. They're unusual for that reason. So, like, it's not every day you come across someone capable of winning a Nobel Prize, and their average IQ is about 160. So it's probably not every day you come across someone with an IQ of 160. And that's the person that's in the sort of top, so it's like 0.3%, is it, in society in terms of intelligence? Like, that's quite unusual. Like, an unusual fellow. Like, yeah, a particularly, well, intelligent person. And, you know, there's plenty of intelligent people around, sure, but I mean, people who are that intelligent, like, you don't come across one of those every day. And you sort of do notice when you come across one. I've had this before when I've come across, a professor of physics who I know a little bit. Like, you know, chatting to him for a little bit, like, well, you really are very, very intelligent. Okay, this is slightly different to sorts of intelligent people I've met up to this point. You know, it was more like I met smart people, sure, like teachers, yeah, they're smart. Lots of kids at school, they're smart, but like the professor of physics, like, oh, you're kind of noticeably smarter than the smartest people I've met. Like that, you know. It's yeah, an interesting experience to meet someone like that. So yeah. Yeah, don't like judge someone on the basis of their fetishes. I can't believe that guy that young. Have you sought help for it? What, like I should seek conversion therapy for it or something? Uh, you gross fucking scumbag. As if you could just be into vanilla sex. You must have a kink. I reckon everyone does. I'm pretty certain everyone would. Yeah. Stick to vanilla. No, don't Google what I'm really into. Ooh, who knows what they're into? Anywho. Yeah, so I'm going to write an article about this and about my experiences of being persecuted for having a bondage fetish. And sort of, well, a fetish for girls in wellies and overalls also. Like a farm girl fetish. Or farm girl fetish. And like, I don't know what it is. I think it's like, for me anyway, I love a girl in like boots and overalls working on a farm. And it's actually pretty unusual to see girls in sort of tractor driving positions, at least in the UK anyway. I've grown up on a farm in the West Country, and I have to say I've seen women, and you know, young or older, driving tractors maybe 3 times in my life. It is really rather uncommon. Tractor driving jobs are almost always taken by men. Women, if they're doing anything on farms, they're often doing things like calf rearing, very often things like milking cows, very often just sheep work, something to do with livestock in most cases, you know. Which is a bit of a shame, I think, because, you know, sexy tractor girl, cool. And I think there is a sort of, slightly feminist actually subtext to that sexual delight. Because, it's like, it's cool seeing a girl in boots and overalls in a typically male-dominated workplace. It's like girl mechanic, isn't it? Like mechanic lady, or like would amount to a girl in overalls, or lady builder, or lady plumber, and all those sorts of things. Like I find that kind of sexy as a job role. Yeah, also, yeah, like seeing like a girl in some sort of like workwearish trousers, like a little polo top, like looks like she works like heating, a boiler fitting company or something. That's cool, and like that's sort of nice sort of steel toe capish like work boots on or whatever. Or lady police officer, that can be really sexy. Yeah, sure. Um, like nurses, I've never been into that so much. Lady doctor, yeah. And in my search for pictures of sort of farming ladies and girls in boots and overalls online, I've come across this one profile on Flickr. I'm not going to say who it is, but he's like clearly trying to get all the images he possibly can of women in boots and overalls, or in wellies at least. And there's quite a few pictures of vets, I think, like women who are working with as large animal vets, i.e., like sort of farm vets. And there's one or two pictures of surgery and one or two pictures of hand up arse shenanigans, which I'm not into. I'm sorry to say, but he's got some great pictures as well. Like, you know, girl in a milking parlour, quite a lot of girls on tractors. Well, a bit of girls on tractors, that's good, you know, or just girls of waddling around a farmyard in wellies and overalls, which is really what I want to see. Yeah, like, oh, farmer girl, you know. It's cool, it's really, really cool. Like, and I've been to agriculture college, and yeah, there are a few girls on the course. It's cool, it's great to see that. you know, like ladies in farming. But the course is mostly male, and it is a bit of a sausage fest. Yes. So yeah. Don't judge people too harshly by their idiosyncrasies, weirdness, and difference. Judge them if they happen to be causing harm to others. You know, and or in the sexual sphere, non-consenting harm to others. That is the key, I reckon, there. And we must stop reasoning with blind prejudice and apply the legal principles that we've already decided upon. And that this issue of consent must be at the core of everything, so far as sexual ethics is concerned. And yes, trust must be involved, of course. And that's really all the most important thing here. Well, within the sphere of sexual ethics. And oh god, I got distracted. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, consent is obviously the most important thing within sexual ethics. But we must not reason via blind prejudice or not reason via like what we at first sight seems unpalatable to us or weird. And we must judge one another on the basis of whether or not we're actually doing one another harm. Oh, this is what I was going to say. Like, yes, of course, people may get a little bit of, say, a sore bottom in kinky bondage fun. But then again, if they want that, and I do also, I'm aware of, because of this Nikita Ramkisoon article, that's, which I'll post a link to in the description. Yeah, there are forms of sadism that actually the law wouldn't tolerate, even if it were consenting. And I think about like things like maiming, dismemberment, and this sort of stuff, and yeah, all that sort of like really, really out there extreme shit. You know, like I heard of one guy sort of, you know, who would sort of put an elastic band or put like castrated themselves. I think like someone may have like ordered him to do that in a sadism relationship. And on a quick side of the S&M bit in sadism and masochism, that masochism is self-harm. Sadism is harm of others. In the BDSM, bondage, discipline, or dominance, sadism and masochism relationship, it is not true sadism. That's what if it's truly BDSM, or if it's, you know, it should be like called something else, like soft sadism, or play sadism, or sadism play, or something. Because sadism might give the wrong impression. For instance, the serial killer Fred West would torture his victims before killing them and sexually abuse them also. Like, he was a true sadist. That is sadism. That's sadism in terms of the paraphilia sadism, which is something and there's a world of difference between that and BDSM and like bondage in the consensual, appropriate sphere of BDSM relationships. The difference is night and day. I think like some people, either for political purposes of their own, or for, you know, to persecute a group of people, want to sort of conflate the two, or they genuinely confuse the two because they're ignorant about BDSM subculture largely. So yeah, I mean that happens, but the Fred West shit, like, that is not BDSM. That is not the subculture. That is sadism. Like sadism, like I think the point of the BDSM thing is like bondage, dominance, or discipline, sadism, and masochism. So it's kind of like an equal split between it's sadomasochism, if you know what I mean. So there's an implication there that it's like taking it in turns or something, maybe even. Or the two should be in balance. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, but really it's just yeah, a harmless, really, sexual interest conducted between consenting adults, you know, when it's above board, and it's not as, and yet I reckon some BDSM people probably have gone off the rails and done atrocious things, or people into this kink have done atrocious things in the past, sure. But then, of course, so have people into standard vanilla sex, and we all know that also. So it is what it is. Every group has their bad apples, and you can't judge a group by the shortcomings or failures or atrocities committed by a tiny percentage of people within that group. And that's true of anything, I think. So thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye bye. I love you lots. And I'm going to go out for Siggy now. Maybe in my slightly too horribly large collar. Thank you for watching. Bye. I love you lots.